A man put his hand under the sun, and something strange happened. His palm turned red quickly, and smoke even rose from it. It turned out that in the year 2043, a rare and massive solar flare destroyed the Earth's entire ozone layer. Under the exposure to radiation, humans were on the brink of extinction. Fortunately, Finch was in a basement when the disaster struck. He was one of the few who survived. Relying on pre-stored supplies and advanced technology, Finch and his dog lived peacefully in the basement for 15 years. However, due to his frequent outings in search of supplies, Finch's body inevitably suffered from the effects of radiation, gradually deteriorating over time. Looking at his dog, Finch couldn't bear the thought of leaving it alone after his passing. As a robotics engineer, he used all his knowledge to create a more advanced humanoid robot. Finch transferred a vast amount of knowledge to this robot, particularly about caring for dogs. With the completion of the data transfer, the robot only lacked a pair of eyes. With time running out, Finch had no choice but to call his robotic dog. The robotic dog excitedly thought it was time to accompany its owner on another resource-gathering mission, unaware that Finch was reaching for its eyes. As the robotic dog's eyes were removed, it lowered its head. Finch installed the eyes onto the humanoid robot. After a moment, this robot, which had been researched for years, finally came to life. Subsequently, Finch customized for commands for it. The first 3 commands were the 3 fundamental laws of robotics, while the 4th command was the most crucial one. Finch was overjoyed. But his happiness didn't last long as the lights suddenly went out. Wearing protective gear, Finch climbed up to the rooftop and quickly fixed the wind turbine. However, just as Finch was about to return, he saw dark clouds gathering, with lightning bolts heading towards them. Sensing the danger, Finch swiftly made his way back to the basement. By analyzing, he discovered that a superstorm would arrive within 24 hours and would last for at least a month. And their supplies in the basement wouldn't last even 3 days. After careful consideration, Finch decided to leave the underground shelter where he had lived for 15 years and head to San Francisco, a place he had always wanted to visit. With time running out, Finch immediately began teaching the robot the basics of walking after attaching limbs. Fortunately, the robot's powerful learning abilities allowed it to quickly grasp the skill. And so, the entire family became busy preparing for the journey. Even the robot dog didn't want to remain idle and tried to help. However, without eyes, it bumped into things inside the room. Finch realized that since they were leaving, the surveillance cameras originally used to deter intruders were no longer necessary. So he immediately installed one of the cameras on the robot dog. Once everything was ready, the family embarked on their journey to San Francisco. Finch had modified an old, dilapidated RV that provided protection against the radiation. As the car slowly left the city, the robot started to have more and more questions. It was like a newborn child, curious about the surroundings and everything it encountered. Meanwhile, the little dog obediently lay on the passenger seat, silently accompanying Finch along the way. They arrived at an unfamiliar town, and Finch decided to teach the robot how to search for supplies. Only by teaching the robot how to survive in the apocalypse as quickly as possible could Finch entrust his dog to the robot after he was gone. They targeted a nearby movie theater, but the door was locked. Finch instructed the robot to try opening it, and effortlessly, the robot dismantled the door. Inside the movie theater, the robot discovered a mirror and stared at its own reflection, seemingly filled with infinite curiosity about the world and itself. Meanwhile, Finch made a discovery of his own. He found a bag of corn. To encourage the robot to learn proactively, Finch found an aluminum lid outside the movie theater and poured the corn onto it. However, Finch quickly noticed a powerful hurricane heading towards them. He quickly got into the car and drove away from the town. But no matter how fast Finch drove, the hurricane was still chasing them. With no other option, Finch parked the car on the side and swiftly took out long nails and steel cables from the toolbox. He prepared to secure the RV in place with the robot. They quickly secured 3 corners. Just as the storm was about to hit, Finch, exhausted, struggled to hammer down the last, while the robot stayed outside, continuing to reinforce the steel cables. Despite Finch's urging, the robot remained focused on its task, diligently working until the very last moment before the storm arrived. It then hurriedly rushed into the car. Before they could catch their breaths, the vehicle began shaking violently. In the raging storm, the first steel cable quickly snapped, followed by the second and third. Losing 3 cables, the situation became extremely dangerous. The RV was now being lifted into the air by the storm. Fortunately, the remaining cable held on until the end. Finch opened the face mask of his protective suit. After confirming that everyone was safe, he finally relaxed and got out of the car to inspect. It was then that he noticed the long nail that the robot had knocked down, which had actually saved them. However, before Finch could celebrate for long, he discovered that one of the RV's tires had been punctured. Although Finch had a spare tire, he had forgotten to bring a jack in his haste. Just as Finch was feeling helpless, the robot effortlessly lifted the RV with its hands. Impressed by the robot's remarkable performance, Finch was delighted. He decided to give the robot a proper name. Considering its earlier feat, Finch chose to name it Jack. However, the robot clearly wasn't satisfied with that name. As night fell, the robot continued to talk incessantly, insisting on having a formal name. But Finch felt that since it was just the two of them, there was no need for a complicated human name. The robot looked unhappily out the window, pondering for a while. Suddenly, it came up with a memorable name.
Jeff.
Jeff?
And so, the robot finally had its own name. The next morning, Finch was awakened by the argument between Jeff and the dog. The robotic dog was watching it on the side. It turned out that Jeff had been trying to imitate dog barks, which had angered the little dog. However, Jeff believed that if he learned the language of dogs, communication with the dog would be smoother in the future. Finch promptly put a stop to Jeff's whimsical idea. After packing their belongings, the family set off on their journey once again. Due to Finch's worsening condition, he drove the RV to a restaurant. Finch asked Jeff to stay inside the RV and guard the supplies while he went into the restaurant. Finch coughed up blood incessantly. He didn't want Jeff to see him in such a miserable state. However, before Finch could rest for long, Jeff secretly sat in the driver's seat and started the car, imitating Finch's actions. But the car collided directly with the stationary vehicle in front.
Did you just drive?
No!
Watching Jeff lie to his face, Finch had mixed feelings. However, since the RV had already left the safe zone, Finch had no choice but to deceive Jeff. He said he wasn't angry and asked Jeff to go inside the vehicle and fetch his protective suit. Finch thought Jeff would obediently bring the suit, but to his surprise, Jeff started the car once again. Seeing this situation, Finch shouted loudly to stop him, but the car still collided with a pillar in the restaurant.
Call the doctor.
Although these were words spoken by Finch in a state of delirium, Jeff took them seriously. He dampened a towel with cold water and placed it on Finch's head. While Finch was in a semi-conscious state, Jeff drove the RV into the city. Accompanied by the robot dog, Jeff arrived at a hospital where he discovered a variety of medications. Naively believing that this would cure Finch, Jeff unknowingly walked into a trap set by others. While the robot dog was searching for supplies, it stumbled upon a box of cookies hidden deep within. Just as it was about to grab them, when Finch woke up and rushed to the hospital, the robot dog had been crushed beyond repair, leaving no possibility of fixing it. With no other options, Finch had to sadly disconnect the power source of the robot dog. When he finally found Jeff and was ready to scold him, some strange sounds could be heard in the distance. Without time to explain, Finch hurriedly took Jeff away from the area. However, it was already too late. They had been targeted. At night, an unknown vehicle appeared behind them. Finch ordered Jeff to step on the gas, attempting to create distance with speed. Then Finch instructed Jeff to turn off the headlights and drive towards a tunnel under a bridge. But as they were about to enter the tunnel, Jeff stopped the car. Based on his calculations, he believed that the RV's height wouldn't allow it to pass through the tunnel ahead. However, due to the urgency of the situation, Finch couldn't dwell on that. Anxiously, he urged Jeff to hit the gas hard. As Jeff had calculated, the tunnel shattered the car's solar panels. Despite this, the RV remained exposed. Seeing the approaching of the unknown vehicle, Jeff had no choice but to get out alone. With all his strength, he pushed the RV into the tunnel. Luckily, the vehicle didn't see them. However, the solar charging panel on the RV was completely destroyed. Lost the only source of power, Finch felt despondent, as it meant everything was over. But Jeff hoped Finch wouldn't give up. Jeff's reckless behavior of crashing the car against Finch's orders left Finch extremely angry. If Jeff continued in this manner, how could Finch trust him to take care of the dog? So he yelled at Jeff for the first time. Although Jeff is just a robot, Finch's words deeply hurt him. Jeff hid inside the car and refused to come out, behaving like a guilty child. Despite Finch's attempts to communicate with Jeff, the robot continued to avoid coming out. Finch realized that his words had been too harsh, and as a result, he voluntarily offered to teach Jeff how to drive. Although Jeff initially struggled with controlling the brakes and accelerator, with Finch's patient guidance, Jeff eventually mastered the driving skills. Jeff drove continuously until nightfall, and they sat by the campfire chatting under the aurora. Jeff was confused as to why they didn't travel at night when the danger of UV rays was absent during that time. Finch explained to Jeff that the dangers during the day were predictable, while nighttime travel had unpredictable risks, such as hungry people lurking in the shadows, which could be more dangerous than the intense sandstorms and UV rays during the day. However, Jeff couldn't comprehend these explanations now and was left alone outside to keep watch and ponder. The next morning, Finch's condition worsened. Seeing Finch lying weak and in pain on the bed, Jeff asked how he could help him. When Jeff returned to the RV, Finch shared his story with him. At the beginning of the disaster, the impact on humans was not immediately fatal, as those who stayed indoors mostly survived. However, soon people began to fight over resources. While Finch was scavenging in a supermarket, he encountered a mother and daughter. However, soon after, some bad guys also arrived at the supermarket. Out of fear, Finch hid behind shelves. When he finally came out, he found that the mother and daughter were gone. In the girl's backpack, there was a small dog. To make amends for not helping the girl, Finch decided to raise the dog and vowed to protect it for life. The next morning, they were only 770 kilometers away from San Francisco. Suddenly, a butterfly hit the windshield, followed by another flying past Jeff. Jeff hurriedly stopped the car on the side of the road and called Finch to come and check. Finch opened the car door and cautiously reached his hand out, then quickly pulled it back. He couldn't believe that the sunlight here wouldn't harm him. Summoning courage, he got out of the car. After many years, Finch once again felt the warmth of the sun. When Finch saw the butterfly land on his hand, he cried out excitedly. At that moment, he felt like he had been reborn. After changing into a clean white suit, Finch brought out the last remaining can of peaches to enjoy. Jeff told him that he had a dream last night in which Finch, him, and the dog took a photo together on the Golden Gate Bridge. Finch was shocked by Jeff's ability to dream. He didn't know what Jeff would be like in 5 years. Finch's dream had always been to visit the Golden Gate Bridge, as his father had enlisted in the military before his birth. On Finch's 15th birthday, his father sent him a photo of the bridge with a note on the back. It said that he hoped they could meet there one day. Despite visiting many cities over the years, Finch had never been to San Francisco where the Golden Gate Bridge stood. He set their destination for this trip as San Francisco, just to fulfill this wish. After hearing this, Jeff immediately became excited, as the Golden Gate Bridge was only 19 hours away by car. But Finch believed that he was running out of time. Although Jeff still couldn't fully understand the meaning of death, he knew it must be a very sad thing. Finch only hoped that after he left, Jeff could get along with the dog Goodyear. So, he took a ball from the dog's toy box and after a simple interaction with the dog, threw the ball. The dog joyfully fetched the ball and handed it to Finch. Later, Finch gave the ball to Jeff, but no matter how hard Jeff tried to throw it, the dog would always return it to Finch. In the dog's heart, Finch was its true owner. Just as Jeff and the dog tried again, Finch coughed up blood due to his worsening condition, staining his white suit. Jeff helped the weak Finch back to the RV. Finch knew it was his final moment and asked Jeff and the dog to play outside while he rested in the car. At that moment, Finch shook hands with Jeff, entrusting all his hopes to him. Jeff, like a child, leaned on Finch's chest. As Finch prepared to get in the car, the dog seemed to sense something and refused to leave Finch's side. Without any other options, Finch had to let the dog into the car. Jeff didn't follow Finch into the car, but instead packed Finch's belongings outside. Later that night, the RV echoed with the dog's mournful howls. Jeff knew that Finch had left them forever. Knowing Finch's Viking heritage, Jeff held a funeral for Finch with the dog following Viking customs. The next morning, Jeff, like Finch, prepared to feed the dog canned food, but Jeff found that his fingers were too thick to open the can. Frustrated, he suddenly stood up uncontrollably as a strong force pulled the can into his chest. It was Finch's final gift to Jeff, a device specially designed to open dog food cans. As the sun set, Jeff prepared to go to the Golden Gate Bridge. Surprisingly, the dog, for the first time, handed the ball to Jeff, finally acknowledging Jeff as its owner. Soon after, they finally arrived at the Golden Gate Bridge, where Jeff buried Finch's ashes under the bridge. On the bridge, Jeff found many photos and messages, so he drew a family portrait and hung it on the bridge's railing. Then, Jeff and the dog embarked on a new journey, and with that, the movie ends. This movie, called Finch, despite its post-apocalyptic and sci-fi elements, is actually more like a heartwarming road movie. Feel free to share your thoughts on this movie in the comments section. See you in the next movie.